Anything interesting?
A letter regarding Felix, Alexius' son. He went to the Magisterium, stood on the Senate floor and told them of you. A glowing testimonial, I'm informed. No news on the reaction, but everyone back home is talking. Felix always was as good as his word.
Was?
He's dead. The Blight caught up with him.
Are you all right?
He was ill, and thus on borrowed time anyhow.
That doesn't mean you can't regret his death.
I know. Felix used to sneak me treats from the kitchens when I was working late in his father's study. Don't get into trouble on my behalf, I tell him. I like trouble, he'd say. Tevinter could use more mages like him. Those who put the good of others above themselves.
Were the two of you...
Felix and I? What an odd question. No, I had no intention of abusing Alexius's hospitality by seducing his son. Not that I've been proper my whole life by any means. It wasn't like that. Even in illness, Felix was the best of us. With him around, you knew things could be better.
What about yourself?
You make it sound like he was a better person than you.
What a mad thing to say. Few people are better than I. Very well, a better person, clearly, not nearly as handsome. Thankfully, Felix wasn't the only decent sort kicking around Thedas.
That was a bit of an odd conversation.
You have remarkably little here on early Tevinter history. All these gifts to the Inquisition, and the best they can do is the Malefica Imperio. Trite propaganda. But if you want 20 volumes on whether Divine Galatea took a shit on Sunday, this is evidently the place to find it.
Such a critic.
Such a critic.
That's the Dorian I know, critiquing every book in my library.
I wouldn't have to, if you could find some rebellious heretic archivist to join the cause.
Are there rebellious archivists? Other than you, that is.
If Carinthia ever starts burning masterworks of literature, I'm sure a few will pop up. Did I see something by Genitivi here? I could have sworn.
What is this about, Dorian?
What else could it be about? What happened at Adamant, of course. We went into the Fade. Physically went in. Are you... all right?
Where's the heart? Okay. I learned so much.
I learned a surprising amount. What happened at the Temple of Sacred Ashes, for one.
Regained your memories. That's good, then.
I think so.
You do realize this feat hasn't been performed in over 1,000 years. Carinthia and his contemporaries entered the Fade and began the Blights. In comparison...
I'm glad you were there.
At least you were at my side.
No offense, but I'd almost rather I hadn't been.
No sense of adventure? That's surprising.
I've not your talent for survival. And not everyone is as discerning as I. If you can walk in the Fade, others will try to follow. Who knows what secrets Carinthia has revealed? Not all of them will be as lucky as you. What they could unleash. My advice? Keep this quiet. Let them speculate. Too many will see this as a challenge.
Sure,
I agree.
That's a good idea.
There are enough idiots in the world who think if they just use enough blood magic, their problems will vanish. It's exactly the sort of thing I want to stop back home. This I don't need. What I do need is a copy of the Liberalum. I'll wager I can find Carinthia' real name. If I can prove he was a grasping ankle-biter with no family to speak of, the luster would come right off. Wish me luck.
Okay.
Sure.
So I take it you're... Dalish? Is that the correct word here?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yes, that's right.
We don't have Dalish clans coming northward, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, duh.
So I've never met one of your people before, although I've heard about them. Little. I hope this won't be an issue between us. I am here to help you deal with the Venatori, after all.
I appreciate your help. Or
I mean, I don't know if he's had slaves before. Because they do some pretty brutal shit to the elf slaves.
No need to dredge up the past, then?
There's no need for us to dredge up the past, is there?
More than it's already been. What with ancient magisters running about? Not at all.
You said Alexius was a mentor of yours.
He was my patron, sponsoring me to the higher levels of the Circle of Magi. In return, my successes were his. I had a lot of successes, naturally. Alexius was most pleased. He and I used to talk over brandy about the corruption, how we could one day make real change in the Imperium. And then he gave up. He stopped trying.
Yeah, he sounds like...
Why did he give up?
On a journey to Hosburg, a Darkspawn raid killed his wife and sickened his son. I remember hearing the news. He hadn't been there, you see. Alexius was convinced he could have protected them. And the guilt tore him up. I helped him with his research for a while, and then we drifted apart.
That must have been difficult.
Back then, I was furious. I told him to snap out of it, move on. I thought I had all the answers.
That's kind of
Later, I regretted my hasty words. But we didn't speak again until he approached me for the Venatori. Too much pride, I suppose. Plus, I was busy drinking. One must have priorities.
Was it hard being away from him?
It was hard not having a patron, yes. I'm not exactly built to fit in. At any rate, he's fallen so low, I doubt he'll ever get up. Sad, really.
It occurs to me that I barely know anything about you.
I am the scion of House Pavus, a product of generations of careful breeding and the repository of its hopes and dreams. Naturally, I despised it all. The lies, the scheming, the illusions of supremacy. That's Tevinter in a nutshell, isn't it? Needless to say, my family was not happy with my choices.
Why would your family be upset with your choices?
Because I rejected their idyllic plan. If they had their way, by now I'd be married to some unlucky girl from a powerful family. We'd live in luxurious despair, despising each other as I waited to take my father's place in the Magisterium. I declined the honor, and thus it's best I'm far from home. Less of an embarrassment that way, you see?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Makes sense.
I'm getting the impression that you don't care much for your homeland.
On the contrary, I care for my homeland a great deal. There's so much potential. Sadly, we squander it. We refuse to acknowledge how far we've fallen because pretending is easier. We pretend the Qunari can be beaten. We pretend that we're superior to everyone, even our own people. Not everyone feels that way. I don't. Sadly, we're the minority.
It just seems... So much of what you say about the Imperium is entirely negative.
It might sound that way. For all our faults, my people have many virtues. We are laden with history and culture. Tevinter is where Thedas truly began, remember? We treasure our past and preserve it. You can walk down a side street and find nothing built during the modern ages. And despite appearances, we care. Deeply. About everything. We have no reserve, not in war and not in love. If I truly believed my homeland was beyond all hope, I wouldn't miss it so much.
Why remain with the Inquisition? Why not go back to Tevinter?
I'm not exactly welcome back home. Not that it matters, I'm quite accustomed to being a pariah. It adds to my charm. I can do more for Tevinter here. If the Venatori succeed, it'll set my homeland back 1,000 years. I'm sure some magisters would disagree, but that's why we kill them.
I think I've heard enough.
That's too bad. I never tire of talking about myself.
I'd like to ask you about Tevinter.
Ah, yes. Everyone outside the Imperium always seems quite fascinated by it. Probably why they come up with so many ridiculous tales. Flying cows over Minrathous. That's madness. All right, that one's actually true, but the cows didn't have wings. I digress. Anything in particular you wanted to know?
Maybe they put them in trebuchets. You know?
Corypheus is a figure out of Tevinter history. He was a magister.
Yes, but that was a different time. The Imperium's power was at its peak then. The Civil War had ended. The Magisterium was united, its armies scooping up bits of Thedas like candy. The Magisters who entered the Black City. It was a demonstration of how exceptional Tevinter had become.
But who were they?
No one knows. There's no record of a magister named Corypheus. All this happened 1400 years ago, before the Blight nearly wiped us out. There are no records. Today, people half believe it's all just a story. That's what I believed.
We have evidence the story is very much real.
But not who Corypheus is, if he even remembers. There used to be families who claimed some of those magisters as their own. That stopped when the Chantry appeared. Then it was shameful, and the families distanced themselves from the tale. All we know is that some men and women entered the Black City looking for the old gods. What did they find? According to Corypheus, nothing. And only he could tell us more.
This is very helpful information.
Yeah, towards the plot. Good thing I specced into that.
Mm-hmm.
Just how often is blood magic used there?
Oh, not at all.
Not at all.
That's what any magister would tell you. They'd be convincingly offended by the notion too. Of course, what people call blood magic here, and what we consider blood magic, are two different things.
What's considered actual blood magic in Tevinter?
Blood magic isn't inherently dangerous. Using your own blood or that of a willing participant, what's the harm? The problem is that what's permitted only gets you so much power. And what if you need more? You always need more. That's where we get into sacrifices and demon summoning. None of that is done. Not officially. Behind closed doors, it's a different story. Real blood magic can give you an edge, a leg up against your opponents. It's safe to assume that any mage of rank does it. The rest are quietly shut out of power, to put it bluntly.
You'd think the Templars would object.
I imagine they did, long ago. Once, their investigations might have been sincere. Then their balls were cut off. Too inconvenient.
Whoa. Oh, okay.
Nowadays, only
Not
the
for real.
friendless are accused.
Holy shit!
Most of them are probably innocent.
I thought he was serious for a second. I was like, that's some serious blood magic.
Yep, and then all of their balls were cut off
Like,
to
oh.
sacrifice for blood magic.
And we're
They
like,
call
oh.
it ball magic.
There must be some mages who oppose this.
Of course. I do. And I'm not entirely alone. Occasionally, there'll be a magister who makes noise, and then the reform talk begins. All very patriotic. Meanwhile, that magister will be quietly shunned. Chances are, surprise, it's learned he was a Maleficar all along. Most learn to keep quiet. Me? I enjoy the allure of pariahhood.
What about slavery?
Yeah.
Anyone who talks about the Imperium mentions slavery. It's the center of the slave trade.
Ah. That is true.
And did you have slaves?
Not personally, but my family does and treats them well. Honestly, I never thought much about it until I came south. Back home, it's how it is. Slaves are everywhere. You don't question it. I'm not even certain many slaves do.
It's not like that here.
Well, we don't have slaves in the south.
In the south, you have alienages, slums, both human and elven. The desperate have no way out. Back home, a poor man can sell himself. As a slave, he could have a position of respect, comfort, and could even support a family. Some slaves are treated poorly, it's true. But do you honestly think inescapable poverty is better?
I don't know. After romancing Fenris, I don't really have a good representation of what, you know.
Yeah, but, you know, I do remember some slaves that you met, actually. Do you remember that one slave girl that you meet and free? And I think... And... Hawk ends up, well, you can take her on as a slave, like, that you pay.
I don't remember this.
Oh, but, like, in any case, like, Fenris is, like, really offended because he's like, you're free now, go. And she's like, so I work for you now? And she, like, doesn't understand the concept of freedom.
Yeah. Oh, wait, no, I think I remember this.
Yeah.
I wasn't that into it.
Is that what you call it? Treated poorly?
Abuse heaped upon those without power isn't limited to Tevinter, my friend. I don't know what it's like to be a slave, true. I never thought about it until I saw how different it was here. But I suspect you don't know either. Nor should you believe that every tale of Tevinter excess is the norm.
It seems strange that an entire empire would be ruled by mages.
I find it strange that your mages don't rule anything at all.
Actually, the fiction in the Imperium is that mages don't rule. The Magisterium rules. That magisters are all mages is considered a convenient technicality.
What is the Magisterium, exactly?
The upper house of the Imperial Senate, and the only part worth having a seat on. Those seats are split among the circles of Magi, the Chantry, and the major families. All mages now. It's odd that outside the Imperium, you use Magister like it applies to every Tevinter mage.
If you're not a magister, then what are you called? No special title?
I'm an Altus, which is almost as good as a Magister, depending on who you ask.
I've never heard of an Altus.
Upper class. Those families who trace descent from the Dreamers, the first prophets of the old gods. If you're a mage and you're not Altus, then you're later. Lower class. If you're not a mage at all, you're Soperati. That's everyone else. We do love our fancy words.
I thought the Archon ruled over the Imperium.
Well, yes. Technically, he can overrule laws passed by the Magisterium, but that never happens. Even so, he gets to appoint new magisters, which means all the families vie madly for his favor. Thus, the Archon gets invited to all the parties. The truest path to Tevinter influence, let me tell you.
If it's a fiction, that means mages do rule then.
Yes and no. Let me put it this way. Mages do rule, but not all mages are equal. If you're not from the right family, chances are you don't rule anything. Maybe you're even a slave. The idea that anyone could be a mage, however, keeps the masses
Is that true? Or is that just like a fiction that you tell yourselves?
Can anyone be a mage?
Technically, the potential runs mostly in bloodlines, but it's been known to happen. More importantly, commoners believe it can. Tevinter legend is chock full of mage heroes from humble origins. So they hold out hope. Someday my son or my son's son will be a mage. Someday. Poor sods don't realize that means he'll be a quaestor at the arse end of the 100 Pillars, at best.
So it's kind of like how Harry Potter and Muggles and Bloodlines and Purebloods work.
Yeah.
A little bit.
But I thought of it, well, yeah.
Being a quaestor isn't a good thing.
I imagine the average non-mage likes to think so. Counting numbers and shuffling papers all day is better than many occupations after all. If you're a second-class citizen among a pack of piranha, however, your outlook changes.
Let me ask you something else.
Of course.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Alright. We're doing this for you guys.
There's an Imperial Chantry, isn't there? With its own divine.
You people aren't supposed to talk about the Black Divine, are you? If you mention him outside the Imperium, people make that face, like you're urinating in public. But yes,
I don't
we
care,
do
I'm an
have
elf.
the Chantry, or a version of it. Night and day comparing it to yours.
It's not technically mine.
Yeah, so what...
I don't
yeah.
follow the maker, so...
Didn't you just say Black Divine?
Do you really call him the Black Divine?
We don't call him that, oh no. In the Imperium, he's the true divine. The woman sitting on the Sunburst throne is some backwater pretender. It all stems from a disagreement over Andraste. Marvelous.
It's like, it's just like every other religious disagreement. They're
Yeah.
like, no, we know what it really is.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like this. He actually ate a piece of bread, then drank the wine. New religion!
Why would they disagree over Andraste?
It's not my field of expertise, but the Imperium believes Andraste was a mortal woman, a mage. Down south, they say, no, she's the bride of the Maker, ascended to his side, divine provenance, a blah blah blah. We feel better believing Andraste was one of us. Makes executing her less damning, you see. So we elected a man as divine, the South declared war, and we've been feuding cousins ever since.
Oh, so...
That makes total sense.
So I guess in the Chantry, electing a woman as divine is pretty much mandatory because Andraste was a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And then they elected a man as divine, and that's like... They're like, what the hell? No!
Hey, why?
Which also explains a lot of as to why there's a lot less, like, gender inequality in Thedas. So, you're defined as male? That's
What? What? Weird.
heresy!
So, the Imperial Divine is always a man?
All the better to distinguish him from that other one, yes. Don't think there aren't a number of female magisters who bristle at that. Why can't they be divine after all? Same reason you never see a man on the Sunburst throne. Because that's how it's always been done. Excellent reasoning.
Let's change it up. Make yours a woman, make ours a man. See how it happens.
Whoop whoop.
How many wars happen over that? Are you religious?
Do you consider yourself Andrastian?
The big question. It might surprise you that I do consider myself Andrastian. I simply do not believe in the Chantry. It is a relic, whether back home or here in the south. Something from a bygone age desperately clinging to relevance. It's not an opinion that makes me popular.
I share your opinion, actually.
That's not surprising, considering what the Inquisition represents. I'll say this. I may not believe in the Chantry, but I believe in you.
In me?
That the Maker sent you, whether through Andraste or fate. Cassandra is not wrong. You saw that in the future, without you, Carinthia prevails. You are our bulwark against evil.
That's a good point.
Um,
I don't know.
I'm not sure about that myself.
Doubt is good. I like doubt. It will keep you sane. Me? I've seen too much to believe I know everything. The world is bigger than I. Even bigger than you. It laughs at all the things we think we know. The Maker doesn't need me to believe. But I do. The thought of no one at all watching out for us is too frightening.
Is the Imperial Chantry so different from ours?
Not in theory. The main difference is in the whole magic is meant to serve man, not rule over him business. Back home, ruling the unwashed masses is serving them, for the good of the Imperium. Perhaps it started with good intentions, but these days it's academic. The circles are in command.
Wow, Dorian, you really love talking.
yeah. This is feeling like a soulless conversation.
Yeah, like this is taking my whole life.
There are circles of magi in the Imperium.
We don't have dismal little mage prisons, if that's what you mean. They're academies, prestigious ones. We have Templars as well, but they don't cancel spells or whatever your Templars do. They're soldiers. They watch for abuse of magic, yes, but only those who are weak or who fall out of favor get dealt with. Mostly they enforce the Magisterium's edicts. The Chantry smiles and nods from the sidelines.
Let me ask you something else.
So many questions.
Okay, this better be the last one. God damn it, Dorian.
I'm wondering if the Imperium would be a useful ally.
I'd think you'd be more concerned whether or not they'd support the Venatori. They won't, of course. At least, not officially. They'll disavow all knowledge of dangerous cultists. Secretly, many magisters will rejoice at the idea. And if the South falls to chaos in the meantime, all the better.
It would be in the Imperium's best interest to help. Surely it could use allies.
I think the Imperium gave up on the idea of allies a long time ago. We've been fighting the Qunari for what, 200 years off and on? It's a point of pride that we go it alone. They'll sneer at the South behind their silk handkerchiefs and say, "You've had it easy for far too long." Let's not forget that the Inquisition seems to be an arm of the Orlesian Chantry. Anathema so far as they're concerned.
We're not part of the Chantry. The Chantry opposed the Inquisition's formation.
You think that matters? Don't be silly. The Herald of Andraste. Your very title smacks of the Southern Chantry. You may as well be a heathen. I think they're far more frightened what you'll do if you succeed.
Alright, bye!
That's
That's
it.
all I wanted to know.
Fair enough.
Okay, bye.
I should go.
Here
It's
I thought
over!
we were just getting to the good part.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Dorian!
I mean, like, that's all really helpful information.
But
Like,
that was
backstory,
like
but
a-
it's like, whoa.
A lecture. Like, just went to a lecture on the Tevinter Imperium. And Dorian.
Oh, God.
Sexuality and marriage. Within Thedas, there are several different views with regard to sexuality and marriage. Common to all groups is that marriage is not primarily regarded as a romantic affair, but a duty to one's family. The Chantry. According to the Chant of Light, Andraste had a spiritual marriage with the Maker. All Andrastian priests are therefore symbolically wedded to the Maker and sworn to celibacy. City Elves. Among city elves, marriage is a rite of passage, the single greatest thing that distinguishes children from adults. Elven children are usually matched by their parents in the alienage elders, and the bride and groom often will not have met each other before the marriage ceremony. The Dalish. Not much is known about the Dalish, and the same holds true for their views on sexuality and marriage. The Dalish appear to be more in line with Ferelden thinking rather than other cultures like Orlais. This means they tend to take relationships slowly and seriously with each other. Dwarves of Ozamar. The dwarves of Ozamar are noted for their polyamory, the keeping of multiple intimate partners, especially among the upper classes. While a dwarf has only one legal spouse, many nobles keep concubines, typically noble hunters. Grey Wardens. Although Grey Wardens are not forbidden from marrying, it is rare for them to do so. Their short lifespans make them poor candidates for parental or long-term relationships. Mages. Mages, because of their outsider status, are not bound to traditional social morals and consequently enjoy greater sexual freedom than most, though the exact degree varies from circle to circle. For example, Anders expresses surprise that Emile de Lancent of the Kirkwall Circle was still a virgin at age 24, and noted that such a thing would be unheard of in the Ferelden Circle. Orlais. Aristocrats in Orlais are notorious for their hedonism and extravagance, and sexual relations with multiple partners of either sex are not uncommon. The peasantry is much less tolerant of such behavior, at least in public. According to the Stolen Throne, Emperor Florian is rumored to have had an affair with his cousin, Megrin, which resulted in Megrin being banished from Orlais to Ferelden. The scandal surrounding their relationship was likely due to their being related, however, not to the fact that they were both men. Qunari. Qunari do not marry or choose romantic partners. A Qunari's most important relationship is that with his or her colleagues. They do not generally associate mating with love. They are capable of feeling and forming emotional bonds with one another, but do not express it sexually, and those who do are re-educated by the Ben Hasrath.